Well, hello. Thank you for joining me. Uh, Today's Demi Daily Deep Dive is about variable initiative. Now, this one is a little bit of a throwback for me as a little grognard in the older versions of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. I think it's considered second edition, but something that I think has kind of disappeared in the role playing community, the sphere of the mechanics of role playing. So I thought I'd try to talk about what it is that makes it cool, and why bother even having it in the first place, and what exactly is variable initiative, just for a hint or a trick or something that someone can use in their game. All right. So variable initiative, in short, is at the beginning, at the top of each round or turn or whatever you use in your current role-playing game, if it's not Dungeons and Dragons, you re-roll the initiative order, the order that all things take place. Just doing that in general, when a lot of games have group initiative, which means like the GM and all the adversaries go at one point, and then either first or second, and then all the player characters go, and they either go first or second. It can be a little hard to get out of that mindset, and some people may feel like it's more of a hassle, but really it's just flexing a muscle that hasn't been used. It's no more different than using any other additional die roll in a game. If someone has a special ability, or the game master knows that some other event is going to happen in the game, maybe a collapsing ceiling or something like that, falling rocks, or a flood or a fire or spitting lava, and if it requires another die roll, it's just another die roll. It's not very difficult. Scrap sheet of paper and maybe someone who records the initiative order is all you need. So the other type of initiative is that everyone rolls their own individual initiative, and then that initiative order remains the same. So someone rolls a 20 and then an 18, and you start going down the line. This is in a D20 system, by the way. So high roll starts at the top. The game master's enemies, maybe the game master may even have two groups of enemies, like the lieutenants and then the minions. And so the game master may roll twice, but whatever the case may be, the 4 player characters, the 2 sides of the game master roll in order, and then that order it stays there and then just revolves over and over again. I understand why initiative remains static, but there are some really good reasons for having variable initiative. So the reason for variable initiative, and I don't believe this is why it was used in the beginning of the game, but I do understand why it existed and its use, and that is that it adds another level of tension when the group, whether the player characters or the game master or whoever, sometimes plans don't survive when they hit reality. Sometimes things just get foobarred. And it adds another level of tension where the players and the game master don't know when or how something will happen, even as close as the very next round. Here's what I mean. So everyone rolls initiative. This is standard play, right? Everyone rolls initiative. The first 3 player characters go, and then the monster goes. So because the players all know that the first 3 go before the monster, they're able to kibitz together and go, okay, well, you cast this spell first, and then you bless me, and then I'm going to strike it after you enchant me to strike it, so that everything runs in a smooth order, and they're able to repeat rinse, wash, repeat that same order the next round after the monster goes, because they're confident, they automatically know what's going to happen. So let's presume the monster has some ability to take a player out, whether it's temporary, like stun them or knock them unconscious or whatever, entangle them or something. So the first round, the first 3 player characters go, they have this in their head, then the monster goes, and then let's say the monster fails to take out one of the PCs, and there's 3 of them. You roll initiative next round, and maybe the monster goes second. So only one PC goes, the monster goes, and then the 2 other PCs go. So now you may have a situation where one of the player characters is thinking, okay, well, we could try to attempt what we did last round, but this monster's probably going to take one of us out. So instead, I need to be ready to save one of my player characters to keep them from going down, because it may not work out correctly. And that's one example. Maybe not the best example, but that's just one example. Another example is a statue in the corner falls off the shelf and gets knocked down on the floor, and it's rolling towards a pit. Who gets to go there first? Well, if you have variable initiative, everyone may change their actions based on what's happening. So maybe the player character that thinks that they're the closest because they're the fastest may not be the one to grab it. Maybe the mage ends up becoming the one that's able to act first, and instead of casting, that fireball, goes, well, I'm going to use my mage hand to stop the statue from falling into the pit, because we need that statue to stop the ritual that's happening in the next room or something like that. So and because they may have the top initiative, it may change their tactics based on who acts first. Also, monsters going, when do they go? When do they act? Maybe a monster that acts on the very last initiative ends up going first the very next initiative, almost nearly doubling their attacks. And of course, this works for the PC's advantage too. The slow PC may end up going first the next round, or near the top of the initiative order the next round, and may be able to lay in a haymaker. So it's really just a tension generator, a way to not confuse tactics, but to add another tactical obstacle and allow the brain to keep moving instead of, and this also means that players that want to dive into their phone because they know that there's 6 other initiatives in the order, in static initiative, they know that they can't dive back into their phone and start playing a video game or, reading some tweets or something before it's their turn again. They've got to pay attention. They need to know what's going to happen. So it's also a good tension generator and a good way to elicit forced attention as to who's moving, where they're going, what's happening, that kind of thing. Another method of variable initiative, and of course, what I'm saying does add a little complication, but I will reiterate that it's just flexing a mental muscle. All right, another part of a variable initiative is that, and I use this extensively with my home game, mind you. This was many years ago, because I've been playing like over 35 years now. Anyway, in our home game, we also had step down initiative. You can call it whatever you prefer, but step down initiative just means that when anything gets to act, whether it's a monster that has a bite and 2 claw attacks, whether a player character has, like currently in 5th edition, you have, an action and a movement action and a bonus action or a reaction and those kind of things, that all of those combat actions, each combat or reaction thereof takes place lower down in the initiative order. We used to use a 3-step and a 5-step. So if you had 2 actions, you did 1 action and then your next action took place 5 steps below. So if you rolled a 19 for your initiative, your next combat took place on 14. Same thing with like monsters. Monster gets like a claw bite. Game master gets to decide when the claws and the bites come in. If you got 3 actions or more, it took place 3 steps down. So game master rolls a 12, and then so one of those attacks, maybe a claw goes off on 12, another attack goes off on 9, or maybe the bite goes off on 6. And all we would do is we would yell out the initiative. Who's got the highest initiative? And somebody would say, I've got a 22. Okay, 22. 21, 19. Someone would say, yeah, I've got a 19. Okay, 19 goes. See, 18, 17, 16, and we would just go down the line. It was because we didn't play online, we just had a scrap sheet of paper, and we just like marked off. It was pretty easy. And we also used like chips, so like a poker chip type of thing, where we would just put the poker chips in on the table in front of us and snatch away the poker chip when we were done our action. So the only poker chips left in that line were the ones who were able to take their turns or whatever. It, like I said, it does take a little mental acrobatic need, but also what happens is the person that's at the bottom of the initiative order usually doesn't have to wait for 27 different actions to happen before they're allowed to take their action. And this also created a tension where maybe you had a player character who has multiple attacks, and they didn't dominate the spotlight by creating this chain gun or chain lightning effect that made everyone else feel insignificant, right? Their attack goes off, boom, and then the next player goes boom, and then one of the creatures boom, and then we go back to the other person who's literally still in his chain lightning thing. Okay, now I strike again, boom. And it also created a tension where the monster and a player character could get locked in battle. And although they have multiple attacks, let's say the creature has a bite and 2 claws, and the player character has 3 attacks, they're literally slashing and biting or crushing or whatever each other back and forth in the initiative round to see who survives. So it's literally both beings could go down in a hail of blood and strikes and that kind of thing. So essentially, that's how variable initiative works, or can work. You could also have stack initiative mixed with variable initiative. So maybe a player character has an ability that only reacts under a specific circumstance. So let's say the player character rolls a 19, they get to go. They decide to use the monster bites them and go, oh, because you harmed me, I get to have this next combat ability reacts off of it. So in those situations, we would just roll another initiative for that next thing to go off, and there's a good chance that yes, it does go off, and boom, it hits the person. Like they rolled a 19 and I rolled a 20. Okay, it goes off immediately. Or hey, I rolled a 2. Okay, well, it doesn't go off until pretty much the end of the initiative round. So I'm not really one to talk too much about mechanics per se, but I thought I'd throw this tip or trick out there. I know that WotC put out a thing about having a variable initiative that was based on like lowest goes first, and every time you want to do something, whether it was like a move or a reaction or a combat, you would pick a die from like D4 to D6 D8, and it would start to climb up, and everyone would roll their die, or even even multiple dice, and then the lowest number went first. We didn't do that because we remembered that the initiative order went from high to low. And we also played a game called Feng Shui. And Feng Shui did that step down initiative where most rolls were between the 18s and the 20s. And you just went in reverse order. And every action was like 3 steps down. So if you roll to 18, then you go in 15, then you go in 12, etc. And if you wanted to act faster than your initiative order, you received a cumulative penalty based on how fast you went. Okay, so if you rolled an 18 and your next action was on a 15, you can say, well, I want to, I instead go on 18 and then I want to go again on 17. You would get a penalty of a -2. In fifth edition, you have an extremely simple technique you can use, which is called advantage and disadvantage. So you could actually use variable initiative, and then when someone says, nope, I want to take all my combat actions right now. Okay, you have disadvantage. You can, it can just be a very simple thing. Same thing with the game master. The creature is, it's, you know, it's got a spear stuck in its flank, it's been burned, it's been shot by lightning, it's going down fighting, it wants to take you down. Okay, the creature is desperate, it's going to do all of its bite and claw attacks right now, it has disadvantage. Or a spellcaster wants to cast a spell, and the spellcaster says, look, I don't want to wait down there at the bottom of the initiative order. I want to go, you know, towards the top. Okay, roll again. All right, you get to roll again. Oh wow, you rolled a 19. Cool, but your spell casting check has gives the opponent's save advantage. You know, that kind of thing. Sure, you could flip it around, turn it around, absolutely talk to it, to using it with your players. I don't suggest it for everybody, but variable initiative did exist. It's not something new. It's not something quirky. It did exist. It was just a muscle that we just used all in back in the day. I remember using it all the time. And so today it actually, I find it kind of quirky that, you know, like all the player characters go first. And it's like, well, no wonder the big bad gets killed in the first round, because, you know, you've got 18, 19 attacks flying at one time before, you know, the big bad gets to make his giant speech about how he's going to dominate the world. I mean, you know, I'd find that bizarre. So anyway, um, off of mechanics, if anyone has anything they'd like to ask or talk about concerning it, if you want to throw something into the chat, I'll absolutely answer. But that's pretty much as far as a variable initiative. I'm not a big person who likes to delve into mechanics. There, I I love automobiles, and there was the automobile industry, and there was something said by like a CEO of Mazda years ago, and it was talking about um, making the biggest and baddest and fastest car, and he's like, you know, there's no real reason to get into the horsepower fight, because there's always something bigger and better. And that's just how I feel about mechanics. You'll always find someone who knows how to use and abuse the mechanics of a system, and think I think you can go down a rabbit hole where the the manipulation of the mechanics starts to outpace the narrative, the story, the reality you're living in, to the point where um, you don't recognize the way the world works anymore. You're just delving into the mechanics. So anyway, that's excuse me, static. That's today's tips and tricks Tuesday. Variable initiative. Just think about how you would use it. Maybe you want to use it. Um, oh, let me add that having, because I'm a self-appointed third pillarist, I love using the environment. I love using the exploration pillar of gaming, added tacked on to the combat and social interaction. And in the cinematic environments, we have the environment go off on initiative 10. So you could have a static or even variable initiative happen in the background from the environment. So let's say there's a rock slide or forest fire. You're in the middle of a war and people are launching arrows or catapults over the field that your player characters are sneaking through. Maybe there are stone giants tossing stones back and forth across a valley, and the player characters have to dodge out of the way of them. You could have those variable things happen on a specific initiative, whether it's 10, whether you roll the initiative or what have you. and have those things go off. And so the player characters may then be tasked with um, how do I avoid or navigate this tension creation? If storm waters are going to sweep over the deck of the ship, and everyone has to make an athletics check against a DC of 16, or get swept, knocked down prone, and swept off the edge of the ship or something on initiative 12, they may change their actions if they are act before or after that initiative. So that's just one more way of using variable initiative, by applying um, a static initiative to the environment, or maybe a variable one if there's like a storm or lightning strikes or high winds or blizzard or something like that. So anyway, I'm DBJ, contributing writer to Critical Hit Publishing. My baby is cinematic environments. All the details are below. Thank you for joining me, and have a very good day.